Well, a very good morning to each and every one of our viewers, and welcome to yet another exciting edition of your favorite Sunday morning program, Media Monitor, a show that brings you news analysis of some of the major news headlines of the week with myself, Alisha Jali. Here's what we have in store for you this morning. We start by looking at the recent Concord ruling on, of course, the secret ballot, because now the ball is in Mbete's court to decide whether the vote should be done in secret or not. We'll also delve into the Public Protector's Absa bank report, as well as other related matters, and also get to explore the new mining charter. Will it be a turning point for the dwindling mining industry? Find out later on. We do have a mining analyst to come and unpack this new mining charter for us. And finally, we pay tributes and look at the legacies of Africa's greatest leaders, former Namibian President Adimba Toivo, as well as former Botswana President Sir Tumile Masire. But first, as always, it's 900 hours. Let's have a look at the news that are trending this hour. South African nominees have missed out on the BET Awards, or this year's Black Entertainment Awards, which took place in Los Angeles in the United States. Some of the winners in the international categories on Saturday included Best International Act, which went to Nigeria's Wizkid. So no luck for South Africa's AKA, Nasty and Babes Wodumo. The Viewer's Choice Award went to Ray Vani from Tanzania, and South Africa's Amanda Black was challenging that very same category. South Africa's very own Yvonne Chaka Chaka, on the other hand, was honored for humanitarian work with the Global Good Award. It was awarded last year to famous singer Akon. The ANC National Executive Committee member Nomvula Mokonyane says the relationship between the ANC and its alliance partners is more than a marriage of convenience, and they cannot afford any differences to divide them. She was addressing the ANC's KwaZulu-Natal Provincial General Council taking place in Empangeni. The conference is aimed at consolidating the province's position ahead, of course, of the party's National Policy Conference. And some good news all around in the sporting front. The much improved Springboks wielded the whitewash brush to good effect by winning the third and final test 35-12 against France at the Emirates Airlines Park in Johannesburg last night. Now, it was South Africa's first win over France at the historic Johannesburg grounds after 4 defeats since, wait for it, 1958. All right, let's welcome our panelists today. We are very pleased to welcome political analyst Dr. Susan Boysen, professor at Wits University School of Governance, as well as Professor Mcebisi Ndlekyana, professor of political science at the University of Johannesburg. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to both of you.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. And of course, with me is our digital producer, Neo Motlong. Neo, a very good morning to you.
Morning, Alicia. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. What do you have for us on the digital front?
We're starting with art insurance this morning. I mean, the Father's Day ad that they released last week where they featured...
It's very controversial.
It's very controversial.
Yeah.
They featured mostly white fathers who are not even South African and one black father. So Newsroom asked this tweet, this poll, is the advertising industry inherently racist? Because you've seen a number of ads that are coming out excluding black people or portraying them without fathers and stuff. So 75% of the people said yes,
that is shocking.
And then 25% of the people said no.
So that's quite reasonable. Let's
Yes.
look at the tweets before we get any input from the panelists, because I really want to know what they were saying there. It says hashtag outsurance. If all fellow blacks can just cancel your services from this company, we will never see outsurance ads ever.
I mean, Jeff also echoes the same sentiment, saying, I complain with action, outsurance. I just cancelled my policy. Blacks need to get this. Stop with all the talk and just boycott it if you are serious.
Well, let's see if other people took any kindly to the matter. Policy cancelled as promised. Ooh, okay. Hashtag outsurance. That is from Maino 8583. So very interesting reviews on Twitter as well. But I want to find out from our panelists, Professor Ndlekyana, what did you think about the ad, firstly, and also the reactions on social media?
Well, I think the ad was not well thought out. I mean, to have, 9 white guys and one black guy in an ad is absurd. In South Africa, of all places, you would have thought perhaps in Europe you would expect that. And I think people should act out their beliefs. The reaction that we've had so far is appropriate. If people disapprove of something, they should do something, right? And not sit down and complain without doing anything. So our insurance will obviously suffer, and they must. They deserve the punishment.
Shame they've already suffered. I mean, we've read 3 people that have said they've cancelled their policies. Professor Poison, what did you think about this?
Yes, it is just a no-go in this day and age. There is a much higher social consciousness of the residues of society that have not been transformed, and our insurance really has to do better than blame it on a relatively junior employee and say it has not been slipped. I think it's a hello situation. But I think they will, the bottom line for me is they will never put out an advertisement like that again.
Hopefully they've learned their lesson to put out more inclusive ads. And just that goes for anybody else as well. I mean, we know that the big hula baloo was about the beer ads or the whiskey ads that were actually advertised on Father's Day. But this time it was a different narrative. So it shows that people are really concerned and paying attention of what should be happening, particularly in the media space. What are we looking at now, Neil?
Talking about media and social media, we're looking at the social media blackout that was driven by...
That was trending.
Yes, it was trending. But if you look at the graph, Alicia, the day it was announced, you can see it was high, the graph was high, but as the day proceeded on the 21st, it went low and it started trending again the following day on the 23rd. So it did kind of slow down social media, but the whole point was to drive the narrative to business that if we shut down social media, you guys have no business at all.
Let's see if people took that narrative into account. Spubelele Zondi says, when is the hashtag social media shutdown happening? When it's the #1 trending topic on social media? You know?
That's a great question, actually. Umdimi says, hashtag social media shutdown. Shutting down social media will not bring down the price of data. Only not buying and using data will bring it down.
Let's get the final view there from Tato Radise. Says the social media blackout is not practical. Professor Poison, did you think it was not practical?
Yes, indeed. You know, the big cost where data is most expensive is on mobile data. And it was a good public statement to remind us and to retain that kind of consciousness that data in South Africa is too high. And in a country where we have the social disadvantages and unemployment, we have free or virtually free data. Probably help open many possibilities for people. So and South Africa is disproportionately expensive. And so we have to look at where the real costs are, and the telecoms companies need to be challenged specifically on that. They're taking notes, but they are not doing anything about it. So it's a good sentiment in the campaign, but it is obviously inappropriately targeted.
All right, we'll view it in that civil way, Doctor. Professor Ndekan, what do you think?
I think it was a very good action. I mean, Kenya has apparently a much cheaper
that's true.
Data compared to us. And yet we're supposed to be the biggest economy in the continent, yet we're so expensive. So we should be able to make up for these losses. I mean, with the economy that we have, so many subscribers, so they can make money really from lowering the price.
Almost everybody has a phone in the country.
Yeah, exactly. So if one has to speak of white monopoly capital, I think this is it. It has to be crushed.
You just had to slip that in there, Professor. No, let's do the final one. I'm not going to say anything on that one. Let's look at the final big hashtag for this week. What are we looking at here? What is this poll all about?
The poll asked, do you think the Speaker of Parliament, Balagambete, will order a secret ballot now that the Concord has said she has the power to do so? Out of the 900 people who voted, 17% said yes, she will, while 62% said no, she won't. 18% saying I want a secret ballot, and then 3% saying I don't want. Yes.
And any more tweets? Do you have any tweets on this one? Bongeni says, do you really think Balagambete will go against Ubaba? Hashtag secret ballot.
And Jabulo saying, echoing the same thing, since Balagambete said she has no problem with the secret ballot, I assume she will order it.
Any more views here? Muzi says, Balekambete, can you just do us right? Please. Hashtag secret ballot. We're going to discuss this in more detail, but Professor Defiant, just a quick one on the social media reactions to the judgment by the Concord.
I think people are quite keen to have Parliament do something.
Yeah.
There's a level of outrage out there in society that Parliament has not exercised its accountability, responsibility over the president. So, though, I mean, what, 68% or whatever, you know, so hopefully Balekambete will heed societal views, but theirs these days is very insensitive to popular views.
Professor Poison.
Yes, indeed. If she can resist social media, she's not also going to resist the president. But we do not really know. The pressures are there. Chief Justice Mogoeng gave her specific directives, as specific as you can get without doing judicial overreach. But we know she can probably do this irrational, rational thing and construct a rational, seemingly, by her standards, a rational argument, and put it in there, and when time, it will go to court. We almost certainly know what a constitutional court would find if she does not order a secret ballot, but she can do that.
Professor Poison, we're going to get into more detail on this topic much later on in the program. Neil, give our viewers the URL where they can go check out all these stories and more that you have on the SABC Newsline.
www.sabc.news, and also on our Twitter, it's at SABC News Online.
All right, well, let's take a quick ad break, and after that, we look at the secret ballot in the no confidence motion. It's all coming up after this. Another motion of no confidence is looming over President Jacob Zuma. This after the Constitutional Court ruled that National Assembly Speaker Balekambete has the powers to allow for a secret ballot and to decide on the appropriate voting method. Opposition parties were thrilled and felt vindicated with the judgment, while the ANC vowed to defeat the motion of no confidence, which will be the 8th against the president. Let's find out more on this clip.
We are doing a job. I respect that.
A buoyant president dismissing suggestions he should go.
I think the people of South Africa did not make a mistake by electing me as the president of this country. I'm fit and I'm doing it very well.
The president denied that the release of the Gupta emails proved state capture. He questioned the origins and authenticity of the emails, pointing out that the Public Protector, Parliament, and the State Capture Commission of Inquiry would probe the matter.
The Judicial Commission of Inquiry and the emails will be part of that. So we are not leaving them unattended to. Then we will be able to speak about the emails with a serious scientific investigation which will tell us exactly what happened.
President Zuma also dismissed reported accusations that he'd facilitated government deals for his son, Duduzane.
You can't single out a young person, one person, and victimize the person because he's a son of the president. It's not correct.
Zuma dismissed suggestions that the nuclear-built program would drain the fiscus and favor Russia, reiterating it will happen at a pace and scale that the country can afford. Ulilani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
Professors, let's talk about the ruling. Let's start with you, Prof. Ndletjana.
Well, I thought it was a simple and yet profound judgment. Pretty much says the Speaker does have the prerogative to decide that the voting should be done secretly. And this is quite interesting because the Chief Justice, it was a unanimous decision, which is very good.
Yeah.
It means that all of them were behind it, and it was written by the Chief Justice. Which also means that in that judgment specifically, he says, in any case, the Speaker did not oppose said that she's not opposed to doing a secret ballot. It's just that she's not sure if she's allowed
She has the
to.
powers, yeah.
Yeah. And towards the end of this judgment, the Chief Justice also says, well, it would be inappropriate of me to order the Speaker to allow secret balloting because she never said that she's opposed to it. So it's a cleverly couched judgment.
Very clever, yeah.
In terms of the law, he says, no, you are allowed. Then also he sneaks in and says, by the way, you never said you are opposed to it. So the pressure now is that she has to allow, well, I mean, you know, I'm talking common sense. In most cases, common sense doesn't apply to the ANC. But in instances where it does apply, she would have to comply with that judgment. If she says no, then she must come up with a rational explanation for refusing that, right? And so far, you have to allow for it because people have been threatened. Makosi Koza, Mondli Kongubele, you know, you have quite a number of them who said, we will vote based on our conscience. So there's pressure there, and there's evidence that should people vote openly against the president, there's a real possibility of violence upon these people. So, you know, she has to take those conditions into consideration if she declines.
You know what I also found interesting while you're busy explaining some of the ruling meaning there, Professor, is that he also said, Chief Justice said, nowhere in the Constitution does it say that you cannot have these motions of no confidence in secret. It doesn't say so in the Constitution.
Exactly. And you pointed out a few instances, like in the election of president and deputy president, speaker of the House. There are actually secret ballots that are used in those. And so it was, besides giving a wonderful interpretation of the Constitution and clarifying a few points on which there had not been that clarity, I think I got the impression he really enjoyed giving the politicians this lesson in democracy, reminding them that we're actually a constitutional democracy, and these are your core responsibilities to represent citizens of South Africa. And of course, there is this big contradiction. How do you reconcile representing the citizens of South Africa with that party political imperatives? And the ANC saying, like we've heard ZANU-PF also saying on quite a few occasions, the party is paramount. That is a sentiment that runs very strongly generally amongst former liberation movement parties in power. The party is paramount, and the MPs generally think they have this ultimate responsibility to ensure the ANC, in this case, will be fine. And the Chief Justice gave a few very important lessons to them on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. But now, I mean, we were talking about the fact that our society needs to see the transparency in terms of our governing system. But now, doesn't the secret ballot go against those values, Professor Lekian?
That's a very interesting question, Alicia. The Chief Justice says the secret ballot doesn't apply all the time.
Absolutely.
You have to choose instances on which it applies because you have to guard against corruption. People being bribed to vote in a certain way, and because of the cover of secrecy, they can vote in a particular way without being known. So you have to choose instances. In this case, does it warrant a secret ballot?
Because there's been threats.
Exactly, and also because you are not. It's not a malicious intention to the extent that you are removing a well-performing president. This president has been a disaster. Period. Right? You have a constitutional ruling, a court ruling that says that he has violated his oath of office. So by all intents and purposes, right? This is a motion that is well-intended to restore the vibrancy of our democracy. So you should allow it. I doubt that people will be bribed to do something. I mean, I don't think so.
Yeah.
The major issue here is conscience, because most people in one way or another, I mean, we meet some of these MPs have said that they would vote to remove the president. Well, the president is a liability. That's quite clear. But they are fearful that, also because, I mean, you know, you have ministers there. If President Zuma goes, ministers go. They lose jobs. They lose. So you have to allow for an environment where people are able to do what is right. And in this case, I think it
Country over party. It brings us back to that debate again, Professor
Yes,
Boysen.
yes. And to tie it into this point of bribes and threats, the sky is actually the limit, I think. We cannot rule it out. I think that there may be attempts to bribe people. If delegates to the ANC's policy conference are receiving money to vote in a certain way.
You see now, these are the new stories that could be surfacing right after that vote.
And it's not policy conference, it's just policy and no election at this stage, but the configurations are starting to take shape. By the time of the policy conference, we're going to see approximately how the branches and the provinces are represented in these top bodies of the ANC, and that will start giving an indication by next weekend this time as to how elections might go towards the end of the year. But pulling it back to Parliament and the secret vote now, there is such polarization there, and heads are being counted. And even the ones who have not been publicly noticed to have been threatened, other ones are being called where the pro-Zumas are suspecting that they might be voting against or trying to abstain on the day. They are called sellouts and traitors. And the stakes are very, very high in there. Of course, we've heard people like ANC Chief Whip Jackson Tembo this week saying the ANC will not vote out their president.
Absolutely.
And there's a big debate in the ANC now. Where do we cut the damages? Is the ANC going to split if that vote divides in Parliament there? That is what the Zumas are trying to say. Maybe that's what we need to look at,
Professor Boysen. What would happen if that secret vote was actually was conducted in secret, and then the results are...
You see, in Xhosa we say, umqolo uphandle. Everything is exposed. They have no excuses anymore. Jackson Tembo has been saying that we need to do the right thing. Parliament has to do the right thing. Now they've been given all these the playing field has been arranged in a way that to enable them to do the right thing. So they have no excuses for not doing the right thing. So and unfortunately for them, especially because the Chief Justice, I think, dedicated about 2 or 3 pages on this, saying that the responsibility or the loyalty of the MPs is to the Constitution.
Absolutely.
Not to the party.
Absolutely.
Because they take an oath to represent the people. They are representing the people on behalf of the people, for the people. So for him then to say, no, we have to prioritize the interests of the party, that argument is now being made against the Constitutional Court. So he's arguing now against the Constitutional Court, which has a lot of disadvantages, because, you know, if Mogoeng were to stand for presidency now, he would win. He's the most popular, simply because he's the most reasonable public figure now, because we have insanity throughout. So, you know, it's not good for the ANC now to argue in the way that they say when the Constitutional Court is like violating yet again a constitutional ruling.
Yeah, but I suppose, I mean, then you should be able to vote with your conscience and vote openly without your vote being a secret if you know that you're protecting the Constitution.
It should be a clear-cut choice.
Absolutely, it should be a clear-cut choice. But then
party politics and the aura of the ANC, and the aura that the ANC likes to present, protector of itself, that enters. And the narrative of selling out and traitors. And, you know, if they could still, the Speaker could still, there's a small chance that she could say the rational thing, given all these circumstances and the toxic political environment, would be to decide on a closed secret vote.
Look, President Zuma so much as called for a secret vote when he said, you know what, you failed 7 times, bring it on.
Yeah.
That's a giveaway. That's a giveaway.
Let's leave it there.
When he said, no, I don't want it, he obviously fears what might come out of a secret ballot.
All right, Prof, let's leave it there. The Public Protector's Absa report has been strongly slammed. It's all coming up after this break. Do stay tuned. Welcome back to Media Monitor. Still discussing the biggest story of this week with Professor Boysen and Professor Ndlekyane here in studio with me. Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane released the findings of an investigation into the Absa Bank bailout this past week. Now, the investigation uncovered that the bank had benefited improperly from a low-interest loan given by the Reserve Bank in the 1980s. The Public Protector's remedial action includes that Absa pays back a sum of 1.15 billion rand with interest, and Absa says the Public Protector's report is irrational and based on numerous factual inaccuracies and misinterpretations. While the bank says Mkhwebane ignored important findings from a previous investigation. Meanwhile, Parliament is to take the Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane's report on judicial review. Let's find out more in this clip.
Absa has confirmed that it will challenge the finding by the Public Protector, stating that the government is allowed to recover 1.125 billion in misappropriated public funds from it. The bank claims that the report was based on numerous misinterpretations and factual inaccuracies. It says this resulted in a finding which was based on irrational and unreasonable legal conclusions.
We believe that the Public Protector has made several errors in fact and in law, and that as a consequence, her decision, her findings, and therefore her remedial actions, insofar as they relate to Absa, are irrational and they can be set aside by a court.
The bank also noted that the Public Protector is not empowered to make constitutional amendments and that the proposed amendments will pose a serious risk to the financial system.
Fundamentally, we do not believe the Public Protector is empowered to change the Constitution, because all constitutional bodies and instruments, including the Constitutional Court, cannot invent new sections of the Constitution. They interpret the Constitution, and we believe the Public Protector erred in that respect.
The EFF, UDM and ACDP have all welcomed the public recommendations with regards to Absa. Diaboseto, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Look, I wasn't around during the times of Bancorp, but really, let's discuss this now. Do you think the Public Protector's report was indeed irrational, Prof?
Well, there's so many indications are yes that it was. You know, on the one hand, one has separate issues. There is the Bancorp Absa thing, and there was this weird, untoward, inappropriate extension of credit to help safeguard that financial institution at that time. But as both Justices Heath and Justice Davis, in the meantime, in previous years, had indicated the obvious wrongdoing there, but given the reconfiguration that those financial institutions have undergone over years, it is almost impossible to say who must be paying back what. And because they argue, and Justice Davis that argues, that because the potential destabilization of the financial system, should anybody sort of on dicey grounds be forced to pay back, would just be way far out and not worth the risk. On the other hand, there is the judgment of the ruling of the Public Protector herself, basically ordering, Public Protector ordering Parliament to amend the Constitution, something that Parliament can only do by a 2/3 majority. And the condemnation of her ruling has just been overwhelming and virtually unanimous. And she, in interviews, I found it interesting, she did not actually try to defend this ruling, she said, let's defer to the courts, as if she is not too certain of her own judgment on that case. And this, for me, is just such a total antithesis, comparing the two public protectors, Tuli Madonsela and Advocate Mqwebane, just total opposite. The one was certain in her jurisprudence and gave clear-cut, also moral directions. And the current one, we hope she still strikes a high ground, but it is just not doing it up to this point.
Yeah, Professor Ndletyana, did we not do this story sometime last year when there was talk about Absa having to pay back a portion of the money, and then it still needed to be reviewed and revisited? And I think other banks were also included in this bailout scandal. Now, a lot of people were saying, if a public protector can order the president to pay back the money, why can she not instruct the banks to pay back the money? Prof. Ndletyana?
No, I mean, she can. Her office does allow her to say that. But the bank must feel that they should. So the decision must be rational. The two institutions did an investigation. SIU, Judge Heath, together with Dennis Davis, a judge, very clever judge, both of them very clever. They had this investigation and decided that, you know, yes, the loan was given inappropriately, but to recover that money, it would destabilize the banking system, and you would have to get that money from the pensioners, the shareholders. So, and they were not responsible for the decision that was taken. So ultimately, you know, this is the thing about decisions. Technically, it might be a good thing to do something, but the impact of that decision might be adverse to the economy, to the institution. So you write it off. We've been writing off a lot of things in this country.
But Prof, they were saying that payment terms can be arranged here. They're not saying that Absa must now take out 1.25 or whatever the proper amount is and send it straight to towards government.
Yes, but Absa must be convinced that they have to pay the money. The decision is rational. They are within their right to do that. But saying, just to let you know on what Susan was saying earlier, that, I mean, the public protector is a nice person, I'm sure. I haven't met her, but she's probably a nice person. But I'm not getting a reassuring level of confidence and conviction in what she's doing.
Based on what, Prof?
And I mean, this decision, especially to say that the Parliament must rewrite the stipulation on the Reserve Bank. Even the courts, Alicia, cannot instruct Parliament to even give them the wording. You must write it like this. I mean, it's absurd. My last point on this is that the public protector is not just a technocrat. She's a leader. She's a public leader. Her decisions have much broader impact. Yeah. She seems to be making decisions as if she has no awareness of the impact that her decisions have, right? And she's a lawyer, for God's sake. Yeah. But to speak in the manner that she did, and she's entered into a political debate. The Reserve Bank has been a subject of political debates, whether or not it should prioritize interest rates, this and that. That's a political debate. She's not supposed to go. And for her to say that the Reserve, she's made a judgment saying the Reserve Bank in its current state does not serve the people. She said that. She made that judgment, does not serve the people. So that's an ideological debate which she's not supposed to enter into. So, it's too early to say perhaps she's captured, I don't know, but this public protector doesn't quite inspire confidence.
She just went way beyond the job description, way beyond any expectation or right that she has to do that. And then, of course, one has to ask the question or wonder about it, why did she do that? Obviously so controversial. Did she discuss it with anybody? Did she consult? Limited evidence and somewhat compromising evidence we've seen in the media of whom she has been consulting with or not consulting with. Yeah. And what does she win through it? She probably wins the president some time to complete a term or to get further in his term, because it's everybody, so many have already indicated they're taking it under judicial review. Yeah. And that is going to be quite a few months down the line before we get any finality on that. And Who wins? The people currently in power.
Yeah.
You see, the other thing, this monopoly, white monopoly capital argument, you see, the banks have been on the wrong in the past. The SACP used to have campaigns to force the bank to give reasonable interest rates to poor people.
Yeah.
And now we have this fake white monopoly capital argument, right? So people are being forced now, because if you are seen in defense of white monopoly capital, people suspect that you are captured, right? When in fact there are instances where white monopoly capital has done wrong, right? So we have introduced this debate to merge in even, so we can't have an honest debate about where banks have gone wrong. So this is the advocates of white monopoly capital have introduced a debate that actually protects white monopoly, because once you speak of white monopoly capital, it's like, okay, you are captured, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the tragedy of this thing. Yeah. It's a dishonest debate because it can be used to protect instances where white monopoly capital is really bad. Yeah. But when you speak in defense of it, you know, you're pretty much seen as a captured person. So that's the bad part of it, I think.
All right. Well, unfortunately, Prof, we've run out of time. I know you wanted to add something there. We have to take a quick ad break, because after the break, we ask, is the new mining charter a saving grace for the mining industry? We'll explain this further with Media Monitor shortly after this break. You're still with Media Monitor. Welcome back. The reviewed mining charter has caused a great deal of uncertainty for stakeholders and the markets by setting new black ownership targets for the industry. Mineral Resources Minister Mosebenzi Zwane says the aim of the mining charter is of a more inclusive economy. Now, the targets include new mining rights holders having a 30% black ownership to be shared among employees, communities and black entrepreneurs. Mining rights holders who have complied with the previous target of 26% have to increase to 30% within the next 12 months, although the Chamber of Mines vehemently rejected it, saying that the department had not held meaningful consultations before the introduction of some of the items. They say they will approach the courts to interdict its implementation. Here's a little bit more on this clip.
The charter is a transformatory tool. Anybody who wants to argue in terms of the charter must say this tool is not transformatory enough. We have taken 23 years in this country to address the shortcomings between the first economy and the second economy, even in this sector. The charter seeks to ensure that ownership in this country in the sector is given to all the people of South Africa, especially the majority in this country who happens to be black.
What do you think of the mining charter, Prof? Do you think it's going to be a sustainable new addition to already a dwindling economy that we're suffering in the country?
You know, in the first place, there has to be transformation, and there has to be more transformation. That sentiment one cannot counter. And I would hope, we still have to see more evidence of that mining houses actually accept that. But then I think a very legitimate point is, and we see that kind of criticism of not having been adequately consulted, coming in the first place very strongly from the mining sector. And they compare their experiences this time around on this third draft with previous ones where they were extensively consulted, where they had gone into hideaways with government and had been taken through the process, and they built some exciting new consensuses in the past. And I compare that with the current experience, where they say they have not seen this current draft. And so it is process against substance. And that substance is also under contention because the mining houses have taken great exception to the fact that it's not once empowered, always empowered. In other words, people who had been previously empowered, and they've actually been doing it, went and they cashed in their shares, and then the mining houses have to jump and issue more shares to a new party. And there have been some problems in how that was being managed. But those things have to be sorted out through continuous consultation. And we know, talking about the Constitution and constitutional prescripts, public participation, consultation of relevant stakeholders in an appropriate and relevant, profound way, those things are substantial driving forces in that process. So I think there appears to be at least many grounds on which this current charter can be challenged judicially. But of course, this is on the eve of the ANC's policy conference. They have to show that they have made some progress on some issues, and showing that we have posited a new mining charter with more radical intentions. That could give them a little foothold argument there.
Professor Ndlekiana, speaking on consultation of the proper structures, the ANC was saying that they want to sit down with the minister and find out, I mean, how he came about with this new mining charter. So no consultation took place there.
It would seem like it. I mean, the ANC is now, you know, there's a lot of tension within. And this is a case of a genuine message, a good message, versus an insincere agent. I mean, this fellow's one is captured. We know that. So the suspicion is that this legislation, especially because it allows naturalized people to also own the mines, that's a Gupta angle. Here's the more important point, I suppose, is that you do need transformation. Yeah. I mean, the nationalist struggle has always been about restoring ownership to the public, to the people, especially black people. And we know that the mining industry and white established business has been resistant to transformation. So they always come up with excuses why they can't deracialize the economy. If it's not this, it's the other. So their objection is expected. We shouldn't be surprised by that. But the more important thing for me, I think this speaks to issues of transformation. How do you do black economic empowerment? You said there must be 30% black ownership, and community ownership, I think, is given about 6% or something like that. Yeah. You go, Alicia, to mining towns like Velcom, Virginia, in the Free State. Once those mines have closed, the towns turn into ghost towns.
That's true.
So the issue is, for me, really, right, is the insistence should be on diversifying the economies of those towns, giving ownership to the communities, ensuring that they use that ownership to diversify the economy, so that should the mine close, they are able to sustain the economy of this.
Isn't that the rational behind
it should be. But you see, when you have these few rich black folks, I mean, they are connected, they open up shelf companies just so that they can get shares, but they don't give a damn about sustainability. And we need to build, to promote entrepreneurial, productive black business people who open up companies, not just get shares on the basis of being black. They must open up companies. We need more companies so that people could be employed, not buy into companies. So for me, and we've been talking about, government has been saying we need to have, they've introduced black industrial project. That's a good thing. Get black people to open up companies, not to buy into white companies. We need that, that's fine, for capital, this and that, but the emphasis should be on black people opening up their own companies so that people could be employed.
Professor Poison?
Yes, indeed. And another issue, a related issue that comes to mind here is the nuclear issue, and so much development that could potentially happen there or not happen there in a whole very messy energy sector in South Africa. And the elitist centralization of benefits, again, came under scrutiny potentially in Parliament this week, and questions to the President, where he denied, direct question from opposition, that he was asked whether he or anybody close to him has received any benefit from the transactions and consultations that have taken place thus far. And he was very quick to deny absolutely nothing, very illustrious. But mark his words, he said, I know nothing. I know nothing. And
he never knows anything. So.
But if you read the Panama Papers and all the deals that are clarified in that process, those are structured so that political principals, suspect people, as they're termed, can actually legitimately say they did not know anything. And just the contrast of that mess, really, with that is now happening in terms of where other transformations in mining, in a reserve bank, should be happening. It is a cacophony of contradictory symptoms.
Yeah, no, I'm starting to think this radical economic transformation, will it ever be realized if there's resistance on the other hand and corruption on the other hand? So it's just, I don't know. I don't even know if I want to talk about this any further. Let's talk about other news now. Africa has lost two giants who played a significant role in the politics of the continent and, of course, in bringing liberation to South Africa. One Namibian struggle icon, Herman Adimba Toivo, who is inseparably linked to the struggle for independence of Namibia. He was convicted in 1968 and sentenced to 20 years in Robben Island. He was buried yesterday in Windhoek at the age of 92. And the other one is, of course, Botswana's second president, Sir Tumile Masire, who played a pivotal role in the liberation of South Africa by creating safe passage for freedom fighters that were fleeing apartheid South Africa en route to other frontline states in order to seek military training. Masire died in Botswana on Thursday at the age of 91. Let's talk about these two great fallen icons. Let's start with you, Professor Poison.
Yes, firstly, Yatoivo, he was such a giant figure in SWAPO, and also he was detained for about, I think, for 16 years on Robben Island, and he was a close friend, associate of Nelson Mandela. So it's really a piece of liberation history that has passed away there. And he was, with South Africa's incorporation and having annexed Namibia, Southwest Africa at that stage, you know, the two struggles for liberation apart from apartheid, South Africa, Namibia, are so integrated. And so that's really one of South Africa's own struggle heroes had passed away. But of course, his term in government and his relationship with SWAPO, that is what we haven't been hearing in the tributes, has not always been that smooth. On one hand, at one stage, he toyed with joining one of the split-off parties from SWAPO, and then was pushed out of cabinet, and then decided to basically retire from politics. So many of these issues that are playing out in South Africa, ambiguous relationships with the Liberation Movement Party, was seen to having lost the path somewhere. That had also played out in his life.
Professor Njekia?
Toivo, we used to sing, growing up, we used to sing songs about Toivo, and at some point we even thought that he was South African. That's how integral he was as part of popular political culture in South Africa. And it's a good thing that in this day and age you have leaders, when they pass away, people mourn, people are sad. That's an indication of how valuable they have been in serving the cause of freedom. And that's something for President Zuma to heed. Because if he continues like this, should he pass away, people might just celebrate. So it's especially with people like Masire. I mean, Masire, I think, is one of the last generation of anti-apartheid freedom fighters in Botswana. The current president hasn't quite continued in that path, I'm afraid. So it also reminds us of the fact that we have good leaders. And people shouldn't come and sell us some fake stuff, saying that this is the best we can have. This is not the best we can have. We have Toivo. I mean, Toivo went against Nuyoma, right? Insisting on ethical leadership, standing up. In fact, most people thought that Toivo was the more deserving president, should have been the president of Namibia. So it's a good thing, it's a sad day, but they remind us of what we are capable of, the best in ourselves.
Absolutely. Let's emulate those principles and values to sum it all up. Professor Boysen, Professor Ndlekyana joining me in studio for a robust debate on some of the biggest stories of this week. This has been a live broadcast of Media Monitor, your favorite Sunday morning program, and we have been bringing it live to you here on the SABC News Channel. We are back with you next week, Sunday, same time and place, with a new panel of guests that will be tackling some of the issues that we'll be looking at in this coming week. I'm back on top of the hour with AM News.